I'm Dorothy, 28 female. I live in a small apartment in the city where my living room doubles as my art studio. As a freelance graphic designer, I have the freedom to work from anywhere, a privilege I've worked tirelessly to earn. This story is about how that freedom was almost stolen from me by someone I trusted, and how a tiny, forgotten piece of technology brought his bitter betrayal into the light. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The plan was 2 years in the making. 2 years of late nights, endless client revisions, and meticulously saving every extra dollar. I called it my Great American Reset. A 3-month, cross-country road trip, just me and my 10-year-old but incredibly reliable sedan, which I'd affectionately named the Wanderer. The route was a chaotic scribble on a map pinned to my corkboard. From the East Coast, dipping down through the Smoky Mountains, across the vast plains of Texas, up through the Rockies, and finally landing on the misty shores of the Pacific Northwest. I had it all planned out, from quirky roadside motels to scenic hiking trails. This trip wasn't just a vacation, it was a pilgrimage. I was feeling creatively burnt out, stuck in a rut of designing corporate logos and bland marketing pamphlets. I needed to see new colors, new landscapes, and meet new people to refill my artistic well. I had saved just over $15,000, a sum that felt monumental. It was my buffer, my safety net, and my ticket to adventure, all rolled into one. Every dollar represented a sacrifice, a dinner I didn't eat out, a new gadget I didn't buy. My best friend, Sam, was my biggest cheerleader. We'd been inseparable since kindergarten, and she understood what this trip meant to me. We had a little going-away party at my apartment a week before my departure. It was a small gathering of close friends, people I'd known for years. Among them was Ethan. Ethan and I had been friends since college. He was a talented musician, or at least he had been. These days, his creative pursuits had soured into a kind of brooding resentment. He was perpetually between bands and working on his masterpiece, which in reality meant he spent most of his days on my couch, complaining about the music industry and how nobody appreciated true artists anymore. I tried to be supportive, letting him vent and even lending him money here and there when he was short on rent, which was often. I saw him as a struggling artist, just like me, albeit one who seemed stuck in the struggling phase. I felt a sense of loyalty to our shared history, to the days when we were both just kids with big dreams. At the party, Ethan seemed unusually enthusiastic about my trip. "Dorothy, this is epic," he'd said, raising his beer bottle in a toast. "You're actually doing it, living the dream." There was an edge to his voice I couldn't quite place, something that felt more like a performance than genuine excitement. He peppered me with questions about my car. "You sure the Wanderer is up for it? A car that old? Anything could happen." I laughed it off, patting him on the back. "She's solid. I just had her fully serviced. New tires, oil change, the works. Brenda at the local garage said she's in the best shape of her life." He nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression on his face. "That's good, you can't be too careful." The conversation then shifted, and I didn't think much of it. In hindsight, his pointed questions were the first, tiny red flag, a fluttering of unease I dismissed as him just being his usual cynical self. Sam, however, pulled me aside later in the evening. "Does Ethan seem weird to you?" she whispered, glancing over at where he was moodily strumming a guitar in the corner. "He just seems, I don't know, salty." I waved her concern away. "That's just Ethan. He's probably just jealous he's not the one going." That, I would later learn, was a massive understatement. The morning of my departure was a flurry of organized chaos. I did a final pack of the car, fitting my suitcases, cooler, and art supplies into the trunk like a complex puzzle. My nerves were a fizzy mix of excitement and anxiety. This was it. The culmination of everything I'd worked for. As I was about to leave, my phone buzzed. It was Ethan. "Hey, I'm just around the corner at the gas station. Let me buy you your first tank of gas for the road." My treat. A little going-away present. I was touched. It was a genuinely kind gesture, especially from someone who was always broke. "Ethan, you don't have to do that," I protested. "No, I insist. It's the least I can do. Pull into the pump at the corner of 5th and Main. I'll be there." It felt like a perfect send-off. A final act of friendship before I hit the open road. I pulled into the gas station and saw him standing by. Why the pumps, a wide, friendly smile on his face. He gave me a big hug. Promise you'll send postcards from all the weirdest places you find, he said. Of course, I replied, my heart swelling with affection for my friends and the life I was temporarily leaving behind. He took the gas cap off. You go grab a coffee for the road from the convenience store on me. I've got this. He pressed a $10 bill into my hand. It was such a small thing, but it felt significant. I left him with the car and went inside, grabbing a large coffee and a bottle of water. I waved at him through the window as the cashier rang me up. He was leaning against the car, texting on his phone, the nozzle in the tank. Everything seemed perfectly normal. When I came back out, he was screwing the gas cap back on. All set, he said, his smile never faltering. Full tank, ready to conquer America. We said our final goodbyes, another hug, and I got into the car, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. The engine started up without a problem. The fuel gauge read full. With a final wave to Ethan, I pulled out of the gas station and onto the highway, the city skyline shrinking in my rearview mirror. The promise of the open road was ahead of me, and I felt absolutely, unshakably invincible. I had no idea that my trip was already over before it had even truly begun. The first few hours on the road were pure bliss. The sun was shining, my favorite playlist was blasting through the speakers, and the monotony of the highway felt like a meditation. I drove south, leaving the familiar city sprawl behind for rolling green hills and wide-open skies. The Wanderer hummed along beautifully, a steady and reliable companion. I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me, the kind that only comes when you know you are exactly where you're supposed to be. The stress of the past 2 years began to melt away with every mile marker I passed. I was free. I sang along to the radio, drank my now lukewarm coffee, and dreamed of the mountains and deserts that awaited me. I drove for about 4 hours, crossing state lines and feeling the thrill of the unknown. I was just starting to think about finding a place to stop for lunch when I felt the first subtle hiccup. A slight hesitation from the engine as I accelerated to pass a truck. It was so minor I barely registered it, dismissing it as a momentary quirk. But a few miles later it happened again, this time more pronounced. The car shuddered and the engine sputtered, a sick, coughing sound that made my stomach clench. I eased my foot off the gas, my heart starting to thump against my ribs. "Come on, girl," I whispered to the car, "don't do this to me." The check engine light, a symbol I dreaded seeing, flickered on, a malevolent orange eye staring at me from the dashboard. The car began to lose speed rapidly, no matter how much I pressed the accelerator. The engine's smooth hum had been replaced by a rough, grinding noise like rocks in a blender. Panic began to set in. I was in the middle of nowhere, a long stretch of rural highway with nothing but trees and farmland on either side. There wasn't an exit for miles. With the car's momentum dying, I managed to wrestle it over to the shoulder, the tires crunching on the gravel. The engine gave one final, violent shudder and then went silent. I turned the key in the ignition. Nothing, just a weak, clicking sound. I tried again. Click, click, click. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the sound of other cars whizzing past me at 70 miles per hour. My journey, my dream, had come to a grinding halt. I sat there for a few minutes, my hands gripping the steering wheel, my mind refusing to accept what was happening. This couldn't be right. I just had the car serviced. It was supposed to be in perfect condition. I popped the hood, though I knew it was a futile gesture. I know as much about car engines as I do about quantum physics. A plume of steam hissed out, and the smell of hot, burnt metal filled the air. It looked and smelled expensive. Defeated, I got back in the car and pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking as I searched for roadside assistance. The first call went to my insurance provider. After a frustrating 20-minute hold, a robotic voice informed me I didn't have the premium roadside package. The second call was to a national towing service, who quoted me a staggering price just to come out, with an even more staggering per-mile fee to tow me to the nearest town, which was over 30 miles away. I did the math in my head, and the number made me feel sick. It would take a huge chunk out of my travel budget before I'd even completed a single day. I had no choice. I gave them my location and was told it would be at least a 90-minute wait. The 90 minutes felt like an eternity. I sat in my sweltering car, the sun beating down, watching strangers fly by on their way to their own destinations. My perfect day had devolved into a nightmare. My sense of freedom had been replaced by a suffocating feeling of being trapped. I called Sam, my voice cracking as I explained the situation. "Oh, Dot, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice full of genuine sympathy. "That's horrible. What do you think it is?" "I have no idea, Sam," I sobbed, the tears I'd been holding back finally starting to fall. "The engine just died. Brenda said it was fine. This makes no sense." Sam did her best to calm me down, telling me to stay strong and that we'd figure it out. But the financial reality was crashing down on me. A major engine repair could cost thousands of dollars. It could wipe out my entire savings. It could end my trip right here, on the side of a highway in a state I didn't even know. The tow truck finally arrived, driven by a grim-faced man who barely spoke a word. He winched the wanderer onto the flatbed with practiced efficiency. I rode in the cab with him, the silence thick with my own misery. He dropped me and my car at the only garage in the nearby town of Oakhaven, a sleepy-looking place called Brenda's Auto Repair. The irony was not lost on me. This Brenda was a stout woman in her late 40s with grease-stained hands and a no-nonsense expression. Her name was Brenda, a bizarre coincidence that felt like a cruel joke from the universe. "What's the problem?" she asked, wiping her hands on a rag. I recounted the story, the sputtering, the grinding, the final, deafening silence. She listened patiently, her eyes scanning the car. "All right, leave it with me. I'll take a look, but I can't promise anything today. Might have to check it in the morning." I was stranded. I found a dingy motel within walking distance and checked in, the floral bedspread and flickering fluorescent lights doing little to lift my spirits. I spent the night staring at the ceiling, my dream dissolving into a financial catastrophe. My savings, my buffer, my ticket to freedom, was about to be devoured by a mechanical failure I couldn't comprehend. My heart didn't just sink, it felt like it had been ripped out and stomped on. The next morning, I walked back to the garage under a gray, drizzling sky that perfectly matched my mood. The smell of coffee and oil hung in the air. Brenda was already there, leaning over the open hood of my car with a frown. "Morning," she grunted without looking up. "Found your problem." A small, treacherous flicker of hope ignited in my chest. "Is it bad?" I asked, dreading the answer. She straightened up, holding a small, clear container. It was filled with a brownish, syrupy liquid. She swirled it, and I could see crystalline particles settled at the bottom. "It's bad," she said, her tone grim. "Someone put sugar in your gas tank, a lot of it." The words didn't register at first. I stared at the container, confused. "Sugar? What do you mean?" Brenda sighed, setting the container down on her workbench. "I mean exactly that. Sugar. Someone poured it into your tank. When sugar gets into a fuel system, it doesn't dissolve. It turns into this thick, sticky sludge that clogs everything up. The fuel lines, the filter, the injectors. It's like pouring caramel into your car's veins." She gestured to the engine. "We had to drain the tank and the lines completely. The sludge is everywhere. Your fuel pump is shot, the injectors are clogged beyond repair, and the pistons likely have significant damage from the engine trying to run on that garbage. The engine is effectively ruined." I felt the blood drain from my face. Ruined, but how? Who would do that? The question hung in the air, absurd and horrifying. Brenda just shrugged. "Don't know, a prank gone wrong, someone with a grudge. You see some weird things in this line of work, but this is malicious, deliberate." The financial implications hit me like a physical blow. "What's it going to cost to fix it?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Brenda pulled off her greasy cap and scratched her head. "Fix it? Honey, you'd be better off replacing the whole engine. A new engine for a car this age, plus the labor to flush the entire system. You're looking at maybe $9,000. Honestly, it's more than the car is worth." $9,000. The number echoed in my head. That was more than half of my entire savings. It was the end of my trip, the end of my dream, the end of everything. Tears welled up in my eyes again, hot and furious this time. It wasn't just a random mechanical failure. It was an act of sabotage. Someone had done this to me on purpose. But who and why? My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation, but there was none. I didn't have any enemies. I was a graphic designer who mostly kept to myself. The idea was so preposterous it felt like something out of a movie. I paid Brenda for the diagnostic work, which alone cost a few $100s, and walked back to the motel in a daze. The world felt unreal, like I was watching my life fall apart from a distance. I called Sam and told her the news. She was speechless at first, then erupted in anger. Sugar? Someone put sugar in your gas tank? Who on earth would do that? It's insane. We went through a list of possibilities, however remote. An old ex, a disgruntled client? None of it made sense. They were all dead ends. The sabotage was so personal, so targeted. It had to be someone who knew I was leaving that day, someone who knew this trip meant the world to me. I spent the rest of the day in that depressing motel room, cycling through waves of grief, rage, and utter helplessness. I looked at the map on my phone, at all the places I would never see. I looked at my bank account, watching the number dwindle. The trip was over. I would have to use my savings to junk my beloved car, buy a bus ticket home, and return to my apartment defeated, broke, and heartbroken. The weight of it all was crushing. That evening, as I was packing my bags to leave the motel the next day, I picked up my car keys from the nightstand. Attached to the keyring was the small remote for my Dashcam. I'd bought it a year ago after a minor fender bender, a cheap little device that recorded on a loop whenever the car was on. I'd almost forgotten it was there. And then, a thought struck me, a sudden, electric jolt that cut through my despair. The camera had a feature I'd enabled when I first set it up, motion-activated parking mode. It was designed to automatically start recording for a minute if it detected any movement or vibration near the front of the car, even when the engine was off. It was meant to catch hit-and-runs in parking lots. I never thought it would be useful. But the gas tank was on the side of the car, near the front. What if the camera had turned on? My heart started pounding. It was a long shot, a desperate Hail Mary of an idea, but it was something. It was a glimmer of hope in the suffocating darkness. I fumbled through my backpack and pulled out my laptop and the small USB cable for the camera. The Dashcam was still mounted on the windshield of the Wanderer, back at Brenda's garage. I would have to go back there first thing in the morning. For the first time in 48 hours, I felt a surge of adrenaline that wasn't born of panic or despair. It was the fierce, cold resolve of a person with nothing left to lose. The unblinking eye of that cheap little camera might have been the only witness to the crime that had shattered my world. And I was going to find out what it saw. I was at Brenda's garage before she even had the lights on. I must have looked like a wild woman, my hair a mess and my eyes wide with a desperate urgency. I quickly explained my idea about the Dashcam, and to her credit, she didn't dismiss it. She just nodded, unlocked the garage, and led me to my car. "Let's see what you've got," she said, her curiosity piqued. My hands trembled as I carefully unclipped the small black camera from its mount on the windshield. It felt impossibly light, like it couldn't possibly hold the answers I needed. Back inside the garage office, I sat down at Brenda's cluttered desk, plugged the camera into my laptop, and held my breath as the file directory loaded. The camera stored its videos in 1-minute clips, sorted by date and time. I navigated to the folder for the day I left, the morning of the departure. There were dozens of files from my drive out of the city. I scrolled past those, my eyes searching for the files from the gas station. And then I saw it. A series of clips time-stamped from the exact time I was at the pump, just before I hit the highway. My heart hammered in my chest. I double-clicked the first file. The video flickered to life. The view was familiar, the dashboard of my car, the steering wheel, and the wide-angle perspective of the gas station through my windshield. The quality wasn't cinematic, but it was clear. I saw myself pull up to the pump. I saw Ethan walk over, smiling and waving. The audio was surprisingly clear, picking up our conversation through the closed window. "You go grab a coffee for the road," his voice said, a ghostly echo of his feigned generosity. I watched my own figure get out of the car and walk towards the convenience store. The camera was now focused on Ethan, left alone with my car. For a moment, he just stood there, leaning against the door, looking around. He pulled out his phone, pretending to text. Then his eyes darted left, then right, checking to see if anyone was watching. The friendly mask dropped from his face, replaced by a tight, resentful sneer. It was a look I'd never seen on him before, a chilling glimpse of the person he was behind the laid-back, struggling artist persona. He moved out of the frame for a second, towards the back of the car where the gas cap was. The camera's motion sensor didn't re-trigger immediately. My stomach dropped. Was that it? Was I going to see nothing? I clicked on the next 1-minute file. It started with same static view, but then a new motion triggered the recording. Ethan came back into the frame. He was holding something in his hand. It was a white paper bag from the convenience store, the kind you'd get for a pastry or a donut. He casually glanced toward the store window, where I was presumably standing in line, oblivious. Then, with a swift, practiced movement, he unfolded the top of the bag and poured its contents into the open gas tank. It was a stream of fine, white granules. Sugar. There was no doubt about it. I watched, mesmerized and horrified, as he emptied the entire bag into my car. He then crumpled up the bag, shoved it deep into the overflowing trash can next to the pump, and screwed the gas cap back on, his movements calm and deliberate. By the time I came back out of the store, he was leaning against the car again, his charming smile perfectly back in place, as if he hadn't just systematically and maliciously destroyed my property and my dream. A wave of cold, hard fury washed over me, so intense it made me dizzy. Brenda, who had been watching over my shoulder, let out a low whistle. "Well, I'll be damned," she muttered. "You got him, red-handed." The video was irrefutable. It was a digital smoking gun. The timestamp, the clear view of his face, the act itself, it was all there. The pieces started to click into place. His strange questions about my car's reliability. His insistence on buying me that specific tank of gas. His fake enthusiasm. It was all a lie, a carefully constructed betrayal. The motive was suddenly crystal clear. It was jealousy, pure, toxic, corrosive jealousy. He couldn't stand to see me succeed. He couldn't stand to see me happy and free while he was stuck, marinating in his own self-pity and failure. So he decided that if he couldn't have a dream, I couldn't have one either. My grief from the day before was gone, burned away by the white-hot fire of anger. I wasn't just a victim of a random act anymore. I had a target. I immediately saved a copy of the video file to my laptop, then uploaded it to a secure cloud drive, and then emailed it to myself and to Sam for good measure. I wasn't taking any chances. "What are you going to do?" Brenda asked, her voice soft. "Go to the police," I said without hesitation. "This is destruction of property. This is a crime." She nodded. "It is, and you've got all the proof you need." I then called Sam and told her what I'd found. She was silent for a long moment, and then I heard her sharp intake of breath. "Ethan?" It was Ethan. I knew he was acting weird, but I never— "Oh, Dot, I am so sorry. That is monstrous." Her validation was comforting, but my mind was already moving past the shock and onto the next step. Justice. I wanted him to pay for what he'd done. Not just for the money, but for the sheer cruelty of it. For wiping that smug, deceitful smile off his face. I spent the next hour online, researching. I found the contact information for the police department in my home city. I also looked up small claims court procedures. The wheels were turning. The devil was in the digital details, and that little Dashcam had just handed me the pitchfork. My cross-country trip may have been ruined, but a new journey was just beginning. The one where Ethan would finally have to face the music. And I was going to be the one conducting the symphony. Returning home was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. The bus ride was long and humiliating, a stark contrast to the triumphant drive I had envisioned. Every mile felt like a step backward, a retreat from the future I had so carefully planned. I had to arrange for the Wanderer to be towed to a junkyard from Brenda's garage, a transaction that felt like abandoning a dear friend. The small amount of money I got for the scrap metal was a pittance, an insult to the memories and miles we had shared. When I finally walked through the door of my apartment, the celebratory Bon Voyage banner from my party was still hanging crookedly on the wall. I tore it down with a vicious tug. The map of my route, with all its hopeful pins and scribbled notes, seemed to mock me from the corkboard. I felt like a failure. But beneath the shame and disappointment, a cold, hard resolve was solidifying. I wasn't just going to get sad, I was going to get even. My first official step was filing a police report. I walked into my local precinct with my laptop, my receipts from Brenda, and a demeanor of calm determination. I sat down with a detective, a tired-looking man named Officer Miller, and laid out the entire story. When I played the dashcam footage for him, his weary expression sharpened into one of focused interest. He watched the clip 3 times, his jaw tightening with each viewing. "This is incredibly clear," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. "The act, the suspect's face, the location, it's all here." He took my statement, collected the video file as evidence, and assured me that T. Hay would be pursuing charges for felony vandalism and destruction of property. The value of the damage far exceeded the threshold for a misdemeanor. "He'll be getting a visit from us very soon," Miller promised. Leaving the station, I felt a sense of validation, but I knew the wheels of the legal system turned slowly. The criminal charges were one part of the equation, but they wouldn't get my money back. That's where the second phase of my plan came in. With the help of my friend Sam, whose teacher's salary I promised to supplement with a nice dinner once this was all over, and a few pointers from her paralegal sister, I began preparing a case for small claims court. The limit in my state was $10,000, which was perfect. I started building my case with meticulous detail, just like I would for a major design project. I gathered every piece of paper that could tell the story of my financial loss. The bill of sale for the car from years ago, the receipt for the full service I'd gotten just before the trip, the invoice from Brenda for the diagnostic work, the tow truck receipts, both of them. I even got a written, notarized statement from Brenda detailing her professional assessment of the damage and the cost of repair, along with a statement confirming the presence of sugar in the fuel system. I calculated the value of the car using online valuation tools. I added the cost of the bus ticket home, the motel room, and even the value of the personal items I had to leave behind because I couldn't carry them on the bus. The grand total came to $9,850. It was a comprehensive and undeniable accounting of what Ethan's petty act of jealousy had cost me. While the official wheels were turning, I had to decide how to handle Ethan himself. He had texted me a few times since I'd been back, messages dripping with fake sympathy. "Hey, heard from Sam you had car trouble. That's awful, I'm so sorry. Let me know if you need anything." The hypocrisy made my blood boil. I played along, keeping my responses short and noncommittal. "Thanks, it was bad. Engine's a total loss." I let him believe I was just a victim of bad luck, a heartbroken and defeated friend he could pity from a safe distance. I needed him to stay comfortable. I needed him to think he had gotten away with it completely. The confrontation had to be on my terms, at a time and place of my choosing, where the fallout would be most effective. An idea began to form, a plan that was equal parts justice and theatricality. Ethan's entire identity was wrapped up in being a true artist, a misunderstood musician surrounded by a small circle of sycophantic friends who bought into his narrative of being a creative genius held back by a cruel world. His image was all he had, and I was going to shatter it. I waited 2 weeks, giving the police time to build their case and for me to file the small claims suit. The court date was set for a month away. Then I put my plan into motion. I sent out a message to our mutual group of friends. "Hey everyone, I know it's been a rough couple of weeks, but I wanted to get together. I'm hosting a small, welcome home, I'm not dead, gathering at my apartment next Friday. Just a casual hang. Would love to see you all." As expected, Ethan replied almost immediately. "Of course, wouldn't miss it, I'll bring my guitar." It was perfect. He was walking right into the trap, eager to perform his role as the supportive friend while secretly gloating over my misfortune. I spent the next week preparing. I set up a small projector in my living room, the same one I used for client presentations. I made sure the sound system was working perfectly. I bought snacks and drinks, creating the illusion of a normal, friendly get-together. On the surface, it would be a party, but it was actually a premiere. A screening of a short film starring Ethan himself with a command performance to follow. The stage was being set not for his music, but for his bitter truth to be exposed in front of everyone he wanted to impress. I felt a cold, calm certainty. He had poured sugar in my gas tank, a sweet substance to cause a bitter end. It was only fitting that his downfall would be just as sugar-coated, a public spectacle masked as a friendly gathering. The night of the gathering arrived. My apartment was filled with the low hum of conversation and soft music, ironically, none of it Ethan-esque. About a dozen of our mutual friends were there, milling around, drinking, and offering me their condolences about my terrible luck with the car. I accepted their sympathy with a polite, enigmatic smile. Sam was by my side, a silent pillar of support. She knew what was coming and gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. Ethan made his grand entrance about an hour in, his guitar case slung over his shoulder. He strode in with the confidence of a man who believed he held all the cards. He gave me a long, performative hug, whispering in my ear, "So good to see you smiling." "You." Ray so resilient. I had to use every ounce of self-control not to recoil. I just smiled back and said, "Thanks for coming, Ethan. It means a lot." He spent the next half hour holding court, telling exaggerated stories and making self-deprecating jokes that were really just pleas for validation. He was in his element, the center of attention. When I felt the moment was right, I clinked a glass to get everyone's attention. "Hey, everyone, can I have your attention for a minute?" The chatter died down and all eyes turned to me. Ethan looked particularly pleased, probably assuming I was about to thank him publicly for his support. "First off," I began, my voice steady, "I just want to thank you all for coming. It's been a really difficult time, and having you all here means the world to me. As most of you know, my trip ended because of what I was told was a catastrophic, random engine failure." I paused, letting the words hang in the air. "But I've learned a few things over the past few weeks, and I wanted to share something with you all. A little short film, you could say." A few people chuckled, intrigued. I picked up the remote for the projector. Ethan's smile faltered slightly, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. I aimed the remote at the blank white wall above my couch and pressed play. The projector whirred to life, and the dimly lit gas station filled the wall. The room went silent. I saw people lean forward, trying to understand what they were watching. Then, Ethan's face appeared on the screen, clear as day. A collective gasp went through the room. I heard someone whisper, "Hey, that's..." The video played out in excruciating detail. They saw him look around furtively. They saw the sneer of resentment replace his friendly mask. They saw him pull out the white paper bag. And they saw him, with undeniable clarity, pour the sugar into the gas tank of my car. The audio track picked up the faint, rustling sound of the granules hitting the inside of the tank. When the video showed him casually crumpling the bag and shoving it in the trash before putting his charming smile back on for my return, the silence in the room was absolute. It was heavy, suffocating, and filled with a uniform, unspoken horror. I stopped the video and turned on the lights. Every single person was staring at Ethan. His face was ashen, a sickly, pale gray. The confident artist persona had evaporated, leaving behind a cornered, pathetic man. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. "So," I said, my voice cutting through the silence, loud and clear. "It wasn't bad luck. It was sabotage. It was you, Ethan." He finally found his voice, a weak, stammering protest. That video is fake. It's edited. Dorothy, how could you do this?" But nobody was buying it. The evidence was too raw, too real. His friends, his admirers, were looking at him with expressions of disgust and disbelief. "Why?" someone asked from the back of the room. It was a simple question that held all the weight in the world. Ethan looked around wildly, searching for an ally, but found none. His eyes finally landed on me, and they were filled not with remorse, but with a venomous, cornered rage. "Why?" he finally spat, his voice trembling. "Because you didn't deserve it. You have everything so easy, with your little freelance business, working from home, making all this money. You just decide you want to go on a trip, and you do it. Some of us have to struggle, to fight for our art. You just swan around, acting like you're better than everyone." The confession, ugly and dripping with envy, hung in the air. His self-pitying tirade did him no favors. It only confirmed what the video had shown, that his friendship was a lie and his support was a mask for a deep, pathetic jealousy. People started to quietly gather their things. There were no dramatic confrontations, just a series of cold shoulders and averted gazes as his social circle dissolved in real time. They walked past him, one by one, without saying a word. Within 10 minutes, the apartment was empty, except for me, Sam, and a shell-shocked Ethan. Just as he was scrambling to grab his guitar and flee, there was a sharp knock at the door. I opened it to find Detective Miller and another uniformed officer standing in the hallway. "Ethan Miles?" Miller asked, his voice calm and official. Ethan froze, his hand on his guitar case. "We have a warrant for your arrest for the destruction of private property." The color drained completely from Ethan's face as the officer stepped forward and put him in handcuffs. He didn't resist. He just stood there, defeated, the price of his envy finally coming due. As they led him away, he looked back at me one last time, his eyes pleading. I just looked at him, my expression blank, and quietly closed the door. The weeks that followed Ethan's arrest were a strange mix of legal proceedings and personal healing. His public humiliation was swift and total. News of WH. At he'd done spread like wildfire through our extended social circle. The friends who had once admired his supposed artistic integrity now saw him for what he was, a petty, vindictive man consumed by jealousy. He was ostracized completely. The criminal case moved forward, and with the undeniable dashcam evidence, his lawyer advised him to plead guilty to a lesser charge to avoid a harsher sentence. He was convicted of felony vandalism, sentenced to 3 years of probation, ordered to complete anger management and counseling, and given 500 hours of community service. Most importantly for me, the judge ordered him to pay full restitution in the amount of $9,850. The small claims court case was even more straightforward. Ethan didn't even show up. I presented my meticulously organized evidence to the judge, who awarded me the full amount in a default judgment. Of course, getting the money from a person like Ethan was another battle entirely. He claimed he had no job and no assets, but the court-ordered restitution from the criminal case was a legally binding debt he couldn't escape. The probation office set up a payment plan, garnishing any future wages he might earn and intercepting any tax refunds. The payments started trickling in, small at first, but steady. Each notification on my phone felt like a small victory, a tiny piece of my stolen dream being returned to me. It would take years for him to pay it all back, but the judgment was on his record, a permanent reminder of his crime. It wasn't just about the money anymore, it was about the accountability. With the legal battles handled, I was left to pick up the pieces of my own life. My apartment, once the launchpad for my grand adventure, now felt like a cage. The travel map was still on the wall, but looking at it filled me with a profound sadness. Sam, ever the practical and supportive friend, sat me down one evening. "You can't let him win, she said gently. "He ruined your car and he delayed your trip. Don't let him destroy the dream itself." She was right. Letting his bitterness keep me grounded would be giving him the ultimate victory. The idea of buying another old car and trying again felt daunting. I'd lost my trust in second-hand vehicles and, to a certain extent, in people. But the desire for the open road, for that sense of freedom and discovery, was still there, buried under the trauma. I started working again, taking on new design projects with a renewed focus. I poured my energy into my creativity, and slowly my savings account began to recover. The restitution payments, combined with my own hard work, started to add up. About 6 months later, I had a respectable amount saved again. It wasn't as much as before, but it was a start. I started looking at cars, but this time my approach was different. I didn't want another wanderer. I needed something new, something reliable, something that didn't have any ghosts in its engine. I ended up buying a small, certified pre-owned SUV. It was more practical, more robust, and it came with a warranty. It was a sensible, adult purchase, a symbol of my new, more cautious outlook on life. One sunny Saturday morning, I found myself pinning a new map to my corkboard. It was the same cross-country route, but it felt different. It was no longer a naive dream of escapism. It was a reclaimed goal, a testament to my resilience. I knew the trip would be different now. I was different. I was stronger, more wary, but also more determined than ever. I had faced a profound betrayal and a devastating loss, and I had fought my way back. I had learned that sometimes, the biggest obstacles on the road aren't mechanical failures, but the envy and malice of those you trust the most. And I learned that a tiny, unblinking camera, a piece of cheap technology, could be the most powerful tool for justice. As I packed my bags for the second time, the feeling wasn't one of giddy excitement, but of quiet, earned confidence. I was starting the engine again, not just on a new car, but on a new chapter of my life. This time, I knew I could handle whatever the road threw at me.